class, in this lecture we are reviewing Chapter 7 and Lab 7.1, and we're going to talk a little bit about random sampling and the requirements for the lab for this week. So one of the things I should say in the beginning is in the first part of this lab assignment, what I get is not necessarily going to be what you get. It's going to depend on a few different things. So if your random samples for at least the first part of the assignment aren't exactly the same as mine, that is acceptable. You didn't do anything wrong. We are generating random samples or random numbers, and this means that my random number may not be the same as yours. So for the instructions, for the lab, it says we're selecting a simple random sample of 30 patients from DRG 292 using two different methods. We're using the RAND function, that's a function in Excel, and we're using the random number generator in the data analysis tool pack. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do some sorting and filtering and copying. Your instructions say for this specific assignment we are using the DRG 292. So we want to only select 292. And then we want to copy and paste just this part of our data set into another worksheet. And we're going to open up another worksheet. And we're going to paste it. Okay. So it looks like here we have a sample set of about 144 patients. So in column L, we're going to label that RAND, R-A-N-D, and we're going to use the random number generator, the RAND function in Excel to create a random number between 0 and 1. There we are, RAND, and we're going to open and close those parentheses. What that's going to do is create a number between 0 and 1 for our first patient. And if you'll look, that number is 0.901189. So if we want to do this for all the patients in our data set, we are going to copy that formula all the way down. Okay, the problem with using the RAND function in Excel is that if you change any of your information in your Excel file, it automatically changes that random number. So it's going to be constantly changing as you manipulate and change data in your data set. And I will show you why that is right now. So if we want to choose 30 patients in our data set, what we want to do basically is sort our information from smallest to largest. So in order to do that, we need to go to the sort and filter button and click sort A to Z, which is going to be smallest to largest. But I want you to notice something. If we do that, all the information in our data set changes. You'll notice this isn't the smallest number in our data set. There are numbers that are smaller, 0.110 right here. So when we sorted it, those patients probably did have the smallest number in that field, but then that information updated. So it's really not a great way to sort information or to create a random sample. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the random number generator in the data analysis tool pack, and then it asks for something to set it up, and I'll show you how to do that. We go to data, Well, my data analysis tool pack's not here, so let's go to File, Options, Add-ins. We want the data analysis tool pack, and there we go. And if you'll notice, every time we click on something or make a change, it's always updating that column L. So here we're going to pick our random number generator. And if you'll notice, it changed that information again. Okay, and so in our random number generator, we're going to enter a few things. Number of variables, we're going to type here 1. Number of random numbers, we want 144 because we've already determined that there's 144 patients in our 291 DRG, I'm sorry, 292 DRG set. We want the distribution to be uniform. We want it to create a random number between 0 and 1. And here is where you're going to enter some of your own information. On your random seed, you're going to type in your own date of birth, month, day, and year. So for me, 08 28 73 output range. Oh, I think it only wants, we should only put our month and our day. Yeah. Yeah, instructions say month, day, and year, but actually it just should be month and day. Output range, we want this to be from M2 all the way down to 145. Okay. And you're going to click OK. Okay, so if you'll notice, that creates, again, a number. We can label our column. Let's see. We're gonna label it as rand, and I'm gonna use my month and day, 0828, which yours will be different. And again, if you notice, column L changed again. So what we need to do here is we want to create a sample of 30 patients from this data set. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our sort and filter, sort smallest to largest, and here is our smallest patient. And what we would do if we were pulling a random sample would be to choose the first 30 patients. So remember, row 1 is your labels, so you're going to go all the way down to, whoops, I went way too far. I'm going to go down to 31. This would be the sample of patients that I would use for my random sample. But if you'll notice, every time I enter something in the data set, that random number, or that rand function, and I should have included labels in the first row, but this would be my sample of 30 patients. Your sample is not going to be the same as my sample, so don't think because you don't have the same patient numbers that I do that yours is incorrect. What I do want you to do is copy and paste these 30 patients into a table or into your Word document for me, showing me that you've done the random number or the rand function that you've done the random number generator in the data analysis tool pack, and you've picked those you've sorted the data from smallest to largest in that column, and then you've chosen those first 30 patients as your sample set. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our data for all of our patients, in our data set. And we are selecting a systematic random sample from DRG 292. So the first thing we need to do is to look at, this is number 2 on your assignment sheet. So the first thing you need to do is look at the number of patients in your data set. So we know there are 144 patients in our data set. And if we want a sample of 30 patients, 144, here we can do this in a function, equals 144 divided by 30. And that gives us an estimation of 4.8 patients, per choosing the sample. So now what we want to do is within the first 5 patients, we want to choose 1 patient, and then we want to count every 4 patients because we're actually rounding down to make sure that we get our total sample. So I'm going to start with patient 3, and I'm going to start with patient number 2 in our data set, and I'm going to highlight that. And so now I'm going to count every 4 patients. 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be my second. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to go through your data set and you're going to count every 4 patients. And when you get completed, you should be able to get 30 patients out of your data set by creating a random sample this way. So this is quite a bit different than the way that we just created a random sample. This is ensuring that we get 30 patients randomly from our data set. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to highlight that. Okay, and that's how we would select a systematic random sample from our DRG 292. Again, what I want to see in your submission for this part of the assignment is that you copy and paste just this data, showing me your highlighted rows and that you've selected your 30 patients. Okay. So number 3 on your assignment sheet is selecting a stratified sample from the CHF data using the MSDRG to define the strata and an overall sample size of 30. So now, instead of a sample size of 30 from just our 292 data set, we are wanting to select a sample of 30 patients from our entire data set, but we want to make sure that the sample represents the whole. So I'm going to show you how we would do that. So we're going to take off our, we're going to put that all back. We're going to undo our filter. So the easiest way to do this is to create a pivot table. Insert pivot table. It's going to give us all that information, and we want it in a new worksheet. Okay, so here we go. And so what we need to do is find out how the patients spread per DRG. So the first thing we're going to do is find our DRG codes, and we want them as our rows. And then what we want to do is do a count of our patients per DRG. So we want our patients, and remember, it automatically sums it, but the summing of it doesn't really tell us what we want, so we wanted to count it. So what we know now is in our total DRGs, in our total data set, for all three DRGs, there's a total of 390 patients. We know that there's 165 that come from 291, there's 144 that come from 292, and there's 81 that come from 293. So we need to see what our percentage of our population is. And we're going to open this up a little bit, and we're going to do some functions here. We are taking our information and let's see if I can do this. And we're dividing by our total. And if we see that our data for our 291 DRG is, it's not in the form of a percentage, but if we're looking at it, we know that's 42%. So we're going to do this for our DRG 292, our total. And then we are going to do it for our last one, equal sign, our count of our patients for 293 divided by our total patients. And if we sum this, and let's change it to percentage. Okay, so we can see that out of our total data set, 42% of our patients come from the 291, 37% of our patients come from the 292, and 21% of our patients come from the 293 DRG. So now what we need to do is we have a sample size of 30 total patients. So now we have to figure out how we can get, how we know how many patients in each DRG we need to pull. Equal sign, our 30, we're multiplying by our percentage, and we see that that's 12.69. We can't have a point, so we're going to have to round those to whole numbers after we get finished. Equal sign, our total multiplied by our percentage, and enter, and we're going to do it for our 293. Equal sign and multiplying by our percentage. So what we need to do is decrease. Okay, so if we see we should get 13 patients from our 291 DRG, we should get 11 patients from our 292 DRG, and we should get 6 patients from our 293 DRG. And those three numbers total the 30 patients that we want for our random sample. So what I want you to do is to recreate this table that I've created, showing me that you can do your pivot table, outlining the count, the number of patients per DRG, creating your percentages of the population, and then your sample size for each DRG if you're looking at a total sample of 30 patients. That's how you'll do the lab this week. Again, I would rather you not submit your Excel file. It's hard to grade. So if you would just copy and paste the information that we go through here in the lab or in the lecture for the lab. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know.